On the 18th, there's sort of this general breach of the city, and most of the city is taken, but we do have this situation where the Templar quarter is still held out for a while. Like you were saying, Paul, this is a fairly well-fortified complex. There are some refugees who have gathered there who are attempting to hold out there, and the Templars, they do hold out there for a while. So, Rand, I was wondering if you could talk to us about this point in the siege. I know that you and I have discussed this in the past. It's pretty interesting. So, once the Mamelukes have control of the rest of Acre, what happens at that point when the Templars are held out and there's some attempts to negotiate? And
you basically have some representatives from the Templars who go out to negotiate. I think the one in particular was Peter de Sevray. Khalil, first he seems like he's willing to be merciful, and he's willing to let everybody have free passage to Cyprus. But the Mamelukes that he sent into the fortress to oversee the evacuation, they begin harassing the women and children there. And they started to argue over Frankish women, and they were trying to carry a few of them off. And the Templars saw that as a breach in the agreement. The Templars fight back. They end up killing the Mamelukes that are inside the fortress, and they shut the fortress back up. The Templars had to have known that this was it. There was going to be no mercy. At this point, the last remaining Templars, I think there were only about 30 of them. Of course, you had an unknown number of civilians, women and children, and other refugees. The realization had to have been known that once that fortress was going to be breached again, everybody inside was dead. They do talk about some refugees being lowered onto ships from the walls of the citadel with ropes. Even in this situation, they're still trying to get Frankish refugees out and off to Cyprus, and apparently they're rather successful. The 30 or so Templar brothers who remain, they basically make the decision that they're going to go out to the last man. The towers inside the citadel were mined and set up to collapse. There's a very stirring account of once the Mamelukes breach in, as they're fighting with the last remaining Templars down in the crypts of the citadel, the mines are knocked out. They basically bring what's left of the citadel down, not only on top of themselves, but also on the hundreds of Mamelukes who were inside. The victory was so bittersweet, and there were so many quality troops lost for the Mamelukes that apparently Al-Khalil forbade any celebrations of victory. He was distraught at the number of casualties that he had taken. Whether or not that was actually true or not, is up for debate. But all the sources do make it very clear that the Mamelukes were significantly bloody in the taking of this city. The conquest of Acre was not an easy affair for them by any stretch of the imagination.
That's a really powerful final moment. One wonders what was going on, among those final Templars as they made this final stand. I mean, it must have been a moment of real intensity and just this powerful final unity there. I mean, I don't want to get into too much speculation beyond what we can actually know historically, but it's obviously one of those really stirring kind of final chapters in the history of the Crusades. There's a good reason why this moment in 1291 is one of the most remembered. So, Paul. Was that you, Paul, who was about to talk?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I was going to ask you to comment on this, so go ahead.
Rand mentioned, some of the accounts, and I happen to have one right here with me.
Oh, great.
It's actually an excerpt out of one of the volumes of the History of the Knights of Malta. The Sultan caused the tower to be undermined, and the Templars, finding it was only supported by props of wood, which they might set fire to any moment, agreed to quit it on condition they would leave them a free passage to the port, facilitate their embarkation, and preserve the honor of the women. The capitulation being signed, they opened the gates of the tower. But no sooner were the first soldiers of the enemy entered than they offered violence to the women. The Templars, enraged at their brutality and breach of faith, laid hold of their swords, cut those insolent creatures in pieces, shut the gates, and though their loss was inevitable, yet they would never hear a word of capitulating. The infidels, with swords in one hand and ladders in the other, advanced to take the tower. The walls were in an instant covered with soldiers endeavoring to mount, but being undermined, as we have said, the props were knocked out, and the tower sunk with a terrible crash, burying the infidels as well as Templars in its ruins. The women shut up in the tower, had the same fate, preferring an honorable death to the danger they would have run if they had fallen into the hands of those barbarians who were still more odious to them for their brutality and debauchery than they were for their cruelty.
Wow, that's a really powerful account there.
The history goes on to mention that, this was the sort of the battlements of the Templar compound.
Mm-hmm.
So there were definitely people who managed to flee and who managed to get away. It goes on to even talk about a convent of nuns of the Order of St. Clair that disfigured themselves and scarred themselves so that they would be basically useless to the Mamelukes as slaves.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thanks for reading that, Paul. Thanks for watching. Click the subscribe button below to subscribe to this channel. To support Real Crusades history, click on the link to our Patreon in the box below this video. Also, you will find a link to my novel, Why Does the Heathen Rage? A tale of the Crusades set during the reign of King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. Check out Scott Amos's novel, To Shine with Honor, a story of the First Crusade. Also, check out Helena Schroeder's biographical novel of Balian of Ibelin, Envoy of Jerusalem. Please click on the link below to like our Facebook page as well. You can also join the Real Crusades History Discussion Group on Facebook. Thank you.